Hey everybody, it's Nick Sorrentino at Against Crony Capitalism. So today I'm going to tell you about the first time I met Ron Paul. I was just thinking about him. I stumbled across an old picture of, I had saved it from the internet years and years ago of people putting up this Ron Paul Revolution sign in Arizona. It was like right at the very beginning of all of the Ron Paul stuff. Anyway, I got to thinking. And, in another life, I was a financial advisor and I got into the business and I had no money to speak of, which, most people who come in, well, I don't know if it's most, but a good number of people who are successful in the business have at least some money, some kind of family money or something to kind of get them started. But I had none. I didn't know any better anyway, but I wanted to be a financial advisor. And so for me to be successful, that meant that I was going to have to do a whole lot of cold calling, which I did. I did end up becoming reasonably successful, by no means off the charts, but, I did okay. But anyway, early days. And I was I was I'd come out of school. And my general disposition was, people would call me a conservative, but I wasn't conservative. I wasn't a conservative. I mean, Easy Rider spoke to me, sure, yeah, I like the National Review, but, liberty is what drove me. Anyway, but that was before I became radicalized in the beautiful city of Charlottesville, Virginia, where home to the Jefferson area libertarians, but that's another story. Anyway, I'm trying to build my business, and I am going through, different people that I can cold call, just one person after another. I think at one point I actually had I think I cold called it was a vice president at General Dynamics. I was trying to make the case for me taking over their retirement system. I mean, I didn't know. I just figured, go for the big fish. She laughed, and I did not get any business out of that. But anyway, I started thinking to myself, I'm like, who, I was looking at gold stocks, and I was like, who would really, who would be interested in gold exchange traded funds, gold stocks, and so on. And I was like, you know what? I have been watching Ron Paul on YouTube for 6 months, just doing his thing. And, why not see if I could get a meeting with him? So it was some random Tuesday morning, I pick up the phone and I call his office and I ask for a meeting, and believe it or not, I actually got one. And I go up there from Charlottesville, so it's 100 something miles away from Washington. I go up there, I drive up there, and unfortunately his wife was ill, and so I couldn't do the meeting with him. He wasn't there. I was really, really disappointed. But I went back home, and then I called and asked for another one, and they gave me another meeting. Now, I remember driving up again. I'm like, I really hope he's there. And I was driving up to Capitol Hill, and in a life before my financial advisor life, I actually worked on Capitol Hill for a little bit, and I interned up there for 2 years. So I knew the general, area. And anyway, I remember, it was one of these days where, the snow is still on the ground, but it's melting, and it's cold, but it's above freezing. Anyway, I remember I parked my car, and I put my shoe as I'm going, to walk to his office, right in this freezing cold puddle. I remember I had a little teeny tiny hole, and the water just flooded into my shoes. Anyway, I was just, oh man, and so I'm walking along the road there to, I forget which building his office was in. Anyway, I go up, I find it. I go through security, find it. And I remember I come to his office, and to the left was a big, framed poster that said, "In God We Trust," which I thought was very interesting. And I came in, I sat down on the leather couch that members of Congress have for people waiting to see them. I sat there, and his staff, his junior staff, not a little, a little bit younger than me. I remember being in their, general shoes, not that long before then, and I think they gave me a water or whatever. And anyway, Ron Paul comes out and is like, "Hi, we have a meeting, I believe." And I'm like, "Yep, absolutely." And so my plan was, he was the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee in the House. I believe that was the case, and I just figured it would be just this massive coup if I could, make him a client and bring him back, and and my boss would be very impressed, and I'd be on my way to vast riches and wealth, as a financial advisor and whatever. So my plan was to pitch gold stocks to Ron Paul. And the thing is, as soon as I walked into his office and I sat down, and we were, sitting, as I remember, across the table, I believe, and any idea of pitching him, and remember, I have no money, and I've taken a whole day to go up and see Ron Paul and try to make a case for business. But I got in there, and I wasn't going to pitch him. I didn't want to pitch him. I just wanted to talk libertarianism with him. And that's what we did. And we talked for 20 minutes or something like this. And we talked about the Iraq War. And, it's very interesting. It was a great conversation. I got up, shook his hand. I'm walking out the door. And it occurs to me, I turn around and I say, Dr. Paul, I really, really do hope that you end up running for president. Now, there were all kinds of rumors about whether or not he was going to run for president or not. And you need to remember, Ron Paul is just really kind of a fairly obscure member of Congress. He's like the only libertarian in Congress. And at this point, nobody really knew who he was. And he looks at me and he goes, no. Like, I have not made a decision on this at all. And I was like, oh, I do not mean to offend Ron Paul. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to offend, but I just have to say, and I was really getting into internet communication at the time, and learning about social media and the power of social media at the time. It was part of my business, as a financial advisor. And I said, Dr. Paul, I don't mean to offend, but I feel like if you did run, you have a real chance. Now, this is another time where algorithms were not as much of a factor. But I said, I really think that you have a chance at, essentially, doing a presidential campaign at low cost because you could go viral. And he looked at me and he said, and he laughed, and I think we shook hands again, and I left, and I drove back home, and I remember thinking to myself, man, I wish more members of Congress were like Dr. Paul, because I had met a few members of Congress, and they weren't like Dr. Paul. Anyway, I was driving back, and I knew I wasn't going to make any money from the trip, but I was feeling pretty good about things because I had met Dr. Paul in person, and it was great. Anyway, fast forward many years, and by the way, I've met Ron Paul and talked with him at least one more time. It might have been more than once, but I know once for sure, one more time for sure. But anyway, years go by. I'm on YouTube, and I see Ron Paul pop up, and I'm like, what is Dr. Paul doing these days? Let's find out. And this is after, I think, his second run as a Republican for president. And he's talking to, I think, a crowd of students, and he tells the story of this time that he met some young man who said that he should run for president because if he did, his campaign could go viral. And Ron Paul is like, look, I'm a doctor. I didn't know what that meant. Viral. I didn't know. And And when I saw that video, I mean, it was like right here. Like it was, it was so cool that he remembered that. I assumed he was talking about me. Maybe somebody else, said the same thing. I mean, it's entirely possible, but I'm going to go with it was me. And, it's funny because that meeting really was a turning point in my life. I had been heading down a pro-liberty route, for a good long time. But in the years to come, I would do politics and ideas and libertarian stuff, and I mean that with a little L. As a significant part of how I made my living, and it's been just a massive adventure. I mean, it's 2025. I think it was 2007 when I met Ron Paul the first time, and it feels like yesterday. Anyway, I just, I went to the Ron Paul Revolution March in Washington, after he had run for president the first time. That was really awesome, by the way. It was super cool. Helped me gauge the size of crowds at protests in Washington in years after that. Anyway, whatever. But that moment in time was just a special time, and I just thought that I would share it with you guys. I'll tell you some other stories around this sometime in the future, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you later. This is Nick Sorrentino at Against Current Capitalism.